Hey, welcome to Undercover Adventure. Today we're going to talk to Diane Brasuell. Diane and her husband Daniel are originally from California. They moved out to Tennessee a while back. Diane is an ER doctor in Knoxville and also a pretty avid whitewater paddler. Her and her husband Daniel have done a lot of international travel and really wanted to pick her brain on all of her medical school stuff. She's like I said, she's an ER doctor, and while she was taking in her undergrad and in med school, she was traveling. They do a ton of international travel for paddling. Daniel has a website called A Wet State, which is an awesome resource if you've never been on there. But I wanted to talk to her about how she was able to time manage and study for all of her courses and exams while she was traveling internationally, paddling and putting, hundreds of days on the water each year. So hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, got it.
Awesome. So we're doing it. Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. Daniel was 001. So.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I've been enjoying listening to all of the other podcasts, so it's kind of fun to be a participant now.
Yeah. But I wanted to get your backstory, kind of where you grew up, how your family was involved in the whitewater, and then I really wanted to hammer on how much you were able to paddle while you were in med school, and then some of the time management stuff that you built into that. I know Daniel sent me a picture of you in Japan, like your feet were up on a kayak and you were reading a textbook at a takeout or something. So just kind of like how you're able to do all that. But yeah, where'd you grow up?
Okay, so I grew up in the Bay Area of California, just south of San Francisco. My mom started kayaking kind of late in life, but right before she married my dad. And her backstory is she had just caught the kayaking bug right before she met my dad. So she actually, when he proposed, made him wait an entire kayaking season before she would say yes, just so that he knew what he was getting into. So
at least he was aware.
Yeah, so he knew what he was getting himself into. Married a woman with a kayaking bug, had 2 kids. She didn't kayak as much when me and my sister were little, but kind of prioritized getting us out there at least a couple times a year. And our family vacations, we went once a year up to Oregon on the Rogue River, and we did a family raft trip. And I just have great memories of every year going up and hanging out with my family, gummy worms hanging out of our mouths, catching newts on the side of the river. It was kind of just, we didn't do it all the time. I grew up in Silicon Valley, but I always loved my time in the mountains and the rivers, and I think thinking back, that was really when I started realizing that I needed to be more in the mountains and less in the grind.
Did your dad paddle too, or was it just your mom's thing?
No. So actually my dad didn't paddle. He was never even a strong swimmer, but he was a good sport, so to speak.
Yeah.
So he would come along with us, and he would go in an inflatable kayak or a raft, but he never once went in a hard shell kayak.
Gotcha. So whenever your mom would go off, when did she start incorporating you guys into her adventures?
So when I was maybe an early teenager, my sister and I would get in kayaks and do little class 1 and 2 without spray skirts, and tried to learn how to roll. But, the kayaks weren't really set up what they are these days. So we didn't really take to it, and it wasn't that much fun being on little itty bitty rapids as a teenager, not actually knowing how to do it. But then later on, as I became an older teenager and kind of grew into the size where you could throw around a boat, I started realizing that it actually was a lot more fun once I learned how to roll, get into rapids, and then my mom started incorporating me into some of her trips. So she actually took me to Ecuador when I was in high school, and It was a little mom and me kayaking adventure. And I think that was probably where I realized the travel bug and that kayaking could kind of spur adventure.
So because when I think of Silicon Valley, I don't really think of an outdoor mecca. So did you guys do other things besides whitewater, or
So the problem with Silicon Valley is it's several hours to anywhere.
Right.
So we only went a couple times a year. My mom and I would go to the South Fork of the American River, which was a solid 3.5 hours drive each direction anytime we went. So basically just in the summer when I wasn't in school, we'd go a couple times a year. But as a kid and teenager, that's enough to kind of get good enough to do things.
Did you do any like hiking or backpacking or camping or?
We did go camping and hiking some. I didn't do any backpacking, actually. Ironically, the first time I ever went backpacking was this spring with my 2 little kids, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
We did do some hiking, but hiking wasn't my favorite. And in the winter, we'd go and do ski trips. We went skiing and snowboarding once or twice a year.
So whenever you said your mom took you to Ecuador and you kind of got the travel bug with paddling, what was like, when did it shift from like, this is the thing I do with mom to like, this is the thing that I'm going to pursue pretty hardcore myself?
College.
Okay. What'd you major in?
So my degree in college was exercise biology. I knew that I liked science, but I didn't really have any clue what science or what I wanted to do with it. So I started kind of general biology, but near the end started realizing that I kind of liked sports and physiology and how the body worked.
Yeah.
And that's where I focused on exercise biology, and that was actually my Bachelor of Science degree.
Okay. And then when did so what school did you go to?
UC Davis.
Okay. And then is that where you met Daniel?
Yes.
Okay.
So I actually met Daniel.
That story.
We have different versions of the
I'm
story.
sure you do.
So I met Daniel the day I moved into the college dorms as a freshman. We were on the North Fork of the Feather River with my mom, and my mom and I were actually kayaking for the weekend. And my dad, as I said, the good sport, as we called him, had all of my stuff loaded up in a different car because he was not with us that weekend since he didn't kayak. So my mom and I went kayaking for the weekend. Then we were going to drive to the dorms, and my dad was going to drive with all of my stuff and meet us there, the good sport that he was. So Daniel and his brother were also on the same river. They saw the young girl that looked about his age kayaking, and
Yeah.
there's just not that many of us.
Right.
Especially when it was a class 4 river. So he saw us, and I ended up talking to him, and he says he saw me the day before. I don't remember that. That day, we ended up on the very last rapid, kind of at the same time. Our groups ended up being at the same time. So he went up to the takeout, took a picture of me on his little point-and-shoot camera, found out we went to the same school, and asked for my school email address.
Oh, he asked you personally? He came up to you and asked for your email address?
He said, hey, I got a picture, because we'd have met on the river that day.
Smooth.
He said, yes, very smooth.
Very
He said,
smooth.
hey, I took a picture of you on this rapid. If you want, I can send it to you. What's your email address?
Daniel's also, people should know Daniel's a very talented photographer and videographer. So if you haven't seen it, the Wet State is a pretty awesome database of all things kayaking everywhere.
At the time, it was not a great
it's
photo.
still-
It was very much just an old point and shoot, but it got the job done.
Got the job done. So he was going to UC Davis studying, what was he studying?
Engineering.
Okay. So you guys didn't really interact a lot as far as your class
No,
schedule?
we're a couple years apart. UC Davis is a huge public California university. There's no way our paths would have ever crossed other than kayaking. So he sent me the email with my photo, and then he started emailing me asking if I wanted to go paddling, and little naive 18-year-old me thought he just wanted to go paddling. So we went paddling a couple times, and it took several months, but finally convinced me to go out on a first date.
Gotcha. So your mom has, what's the origin of the stars on the paddle? Because I know you and your mom both have those, and I feel like that's kind of cool. Like, tell that story.
Oh, yeah. So she started doing that when I was in high school. She never liked how whenever we did shuttles, she could never find which paddle was hers. It always just got lost in the mess of paddles. They all looked the same.
Yeah.
So she decided to get this sign material, and I think it was actually a conversation with my sister.
Okay.
My older sister was like, oh, stars would be an easy thing to cut out and put. So she started putting stars on all of her paddles, and it was bright yellow so that she could see it easily. If she swam in the river, you could find her paddle. It would pop up, and you'd see the bright yellow stars. We could get it. And I started doing the same because it made a lot of sense, and I thought it was cool.
I just thought it was cool. I saw a picture of the two of you together, and you guys were like hugging in an eddy, and you had your paddles up. I don't know. I just thought it was cool.
I still love the stars.
I love the fact that your mom's still paddling.
Yeah.
Like, Daniel said something about she's coming down to, like, or she's currently on a trip or planning a trip, or you guys are going somewhere together.
She currently paddles more than I do right now.
Okay.
She is going on the Middle Fork of the Salmon this year, and also has
Yes.
already booked a trip to the Grand Canyon this fall.
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Which she says it's going to be her last Grand Canyon trip, but she's been saying that for a while, so who knows?
It gets its hooks in you.
It does.
My buddy Adam was trying to convince me to go for years, and I kept blowing him off. And then the first time I went, I was like, "Oh, this is why everyone."
She's
goes.
probably paddled the Grand Canyon 10 times and the Middle Fork of the Salmon 20 or 25, but she still loves it.
That's awesome. Well, so you meet Daniel, you guys start paddling together. Then what?
So we started paddling together. We started kind of pushing each other and doing harder things. At the time, I'd never done anything harder than Class 4, and he was kind of tinkering with some Class 5, and we kind of both realized that we could do it together. So we started meeting groups of friends, getting more paddling, realized that the paddling could take us on adventures. And I think we kind of realized together that we really liked adventuring, and we loved the adventuring that paddling could open up for us. Our first trip together was our friend invited us on a Mexico trip. So I guess we were just able to do it. It was over one of our winter breaks from college. We said yes. We all piled up into a van and drove 42 hours straight where there were 7 of us in a van. We alternated drivers.
I've done that.
Drove 2 hours straight down to Mexico and went paddling and then drove back. And it was so amazing. And that was our first international adventure together. And now, gosh, we've done countless more.
So that was, what year was this?
Oh, that was probably 2006 or 7.
Okay. And that was your first trip together, and then you guys come back to California. You said, you'd been doing some Class 4 leading up and then started branching to Class 5. In your opinion, what's the difference?
Between Class 4 and Class 5?
When does it go into Class 5?
Probably where there's really only one good line, and there's also a dangerous aspect to it where you really don't want to mess it up. That's it in my mind. It's both the difficulty and the consequences.
Gotcha. So what were some of the runs around California, like local runs that you guys started stepping up to?
So the first big run that we stepped up to, at least in my memory, Daniel will probably tell me I'm wrong. His memory is much sharper than mine. But Giant Gap was one of the big ones because Giant Gap in California, there is a classic run that we had done all the time. And both of us had done multiple times before we ever met each other, called Chamberlain Falls, which is generally called a Class 4, solid Class 4 run in California. But we had both done it tons of times. But just upstream of it, so the takeout and the put-in are shared, is a run called Giant Gap. And it's typically done as an overnighter, but you can do it together. I mean, it's honestly just the very end of Royal Gorge. But in general, for people who aren't doing Royal Gorge or things like that, it's usually considered a classic overnighter.
Okay.
So,
what were some other ones around? What were some other ones around that besides the?
It's not an overnighter. I totally misspoke. It was an overnighter when we did it as Generation, and Giant Gap. Giant Gap is just a day run. But
what are some of your other favorites?
When we had stepped up to that together, that was kind of a big first thing for both of us.
Gotcha.
I don't know the other side of. Lover's Leap. There's just so many runs.
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, so one of the things I really wanted to dive into is how you were able to put over 100 days on the water while you were in med school. That's super impressive. That takes a tremendous amount of time management and motivation. And how did you prioritize studying while trying to get that many days on the water, and then what were kind of the hardest parts of all of that? How did Daniel help, obviously, but how did you were able to fit all that in? How'd you do it?
Okay, so that's a good question. So I just prioritized kayaking, and there's really no other way to say it.
Kayaking 1, med school second?
It was more, med school was still 1.
Okay.
But kayaking was a close 2, and everything else was a pretty far drop beneath. So For example, my medical school was in Vallejo and Daniel lived in Sacramento. And anyone who knows California geography, Vallejo is the wrong direction for the mountains and the river. So during the week, I rented a room, lived close to school. My medical school friends would ask me to go do things, go to dinner, hang out, do various things. And I would just say no. We'd go to class, we'd do our labs. I'd go home and study. I didn't even really do study groups because I found them distracting because people would want to sit there and chat. And I didn't watch TV shows hardly ever. Or if I was going to, I'd save it for a day I could do it with Daniel. And I'd go home and study. And then on the weekends were dedicated kayaking time.
Okay. Did you study a lot in the shuttle drives and stuff like that?
I studied everywhere.
Okay.
So I figured out ways to put all of my study material on laptops, in notebooks, on an iPad, and I would either study or sleep while driving. So Daniel did a lot of our driving then, which was awesome. So I would study or catch up on sleep, depending on the day and the year. And then we'd get to the river. We'd do the river. It'd be great. Everyone else would go hang out, and I would go find a rock by myself and put my feet up and study, just like you said in that Japan picture.
And so what's your specialty? What did you ultimately graduate from medical school with? And then what are you currently doing?
So I ended up going into family medicine, but then I did an ER fellowship. So now I'm an ER doctor, and that's all I do.
What does a typical day look like for an ER doctor?
Oh, gosh, it's so varied, a typical day for an ER doctor. So that's honestly why I love the ER, is because
Just the chaos.
is no typical day for an ER doctor. You have a little kid with a cough. You have a 20-year-old with a cough. You have an old person with a cough who can't breathe, that you have to help them breathe. Heart attacks, traumas, stitches, broken bones that need to be reset, people vomiting tons of blood, bleeding out of limbs. There's just no typical.
How did the chaos of being, like, you're an extreme sport athlete, right? So how did the chaos of being that kind of an athlete and managing chaos in those circumstances help prepare you for what your day-to-day is like?
Oh, I think it incredibly prepared me. Being a kayaker and doing all of the things that we do, you kind of have to let time stop. You have to think things through. You have to be pretty organized in how you approach even just on the river once you're there, even not even getting into the planning, the pre-trip planning. And then being able to change your mind very quickly and make rapid decisions when you're in the middle of a big rapid. Your plan A does not always work.
No.
It would be great if it did, but plan A is great until it's not. And so being able to have that in the back of your mind, B, C, and D, that you looked at from the side of the river or that your friend told you about, and being able to make a sharp decision and quickly turn it around so that you can get to the end of the rapid and do well with it.
Yeah. So so you and Daniel go to Mexico for your first international trip. What was your next international trip after that?
I think our second one was actually Ecuador. The two of us went to Ecuador.
Okay. And then that was maybe a week? Like, what'd you knock off while you were there?
Just
did you go back to some of the older ones you did when you were with your mom?
Mm-hmm. Some of the classic rivers and the Quijos, and then we went to the Tena side and did some of the runs there. We actually had some low water in our Tena trip, so we didn't get to do some of the runs that we wanted, but it was still overall a great trip. But yeah, those two trips were kind of our shorter trips, just a week each.
What are some of your favorite international trips you've been on? Because you guys have been everywhere. I mean, as far as I'm sure there's other people that have done more international travel with a whitewater boat, but you guys have done quite a bit.
So honestly, one of my favorites is probably Japan, and the reason is because it probably shouldn't have happened and I never should have gone.
Yeah.
So we went to Japan right in the middle of medical school. So for people who are not doctors, you would have no idea, but how you do medical school is you do the first 2 years of just book learning, and yeah, you do some clinical work here and there, and you volunteer, I guess, but you're really not able to do anything. And then after your second year of coursework, where you're in the classroom, you take step 1 of boards. Step one of boards is a huge deal in medical school. It's hard, it's rigorous. People study for months for it, but most people study for several weeks without doing anything else, no breaks. It's also considered one of kind of the thresholds of what you need to pass, and your score matters for getting into various residencies, which is also very important in medical school and becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
And then after you do that, you start your rotations, which is your clinical work where you go and shadow and work alongside doctors in various specialties and try to decide what you want to do with the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So our friends invited us on this trip to Japan, and the initial answer I gave was, no, I can't. There's zero chance I am finishing rotations, or I'm finishing my coursework. I have all my exams, and I have to study for boards. Like, there's no way. Boards are super important. And then they planned the dates. And then I realized
maybe
it was after my exams, because obviously you can't tell your professors you're missing an exam, right? So it was after our exams, and it was during what would have been my first month of rotations or when I was taking boards. And I realized that if I stacked all of my vacation, I could put my vacation for Japan, but then I would have to take boards immediately upon returning. And I thought about it long enough and realized that maybe it was worth it.
Work, yeah.
And decided to commit.
Okay.
And I'm so glad I did. It was such an amazing trip to get to go somewhere that different and paddle whitewater. And we did certain rivers that really have hardly been done in just such a beautiful country.
What were some of the high points? What'd you knock off?
The Kyotsugawa was probably my favorite run.
Okay.
Because it had only been done, I think, once or twice before by our friend Yoshi, who we went with, and honestly, we could not have done the trip without him.
That's what Daniel said.
Mm-hmm. But he brought us there and showed us down, and we all had to work together. Obviously, it's a group effort, but there were ice bridges, and it was so beautiful, and the rapids were so fun.
What's the culture like?
The culture, very
was logistics and culture easy to
open
navigate?
And pleasant. Everybody was super friendly. We would go to a park and lay out all of our stuff and just camp there. Wouldn't be an actual campground, but our friend Yoshi would be like, well, everyone's too polite to tell us to leave, so it's fine. And there were heated toilet seats and phone chargers and camera chargers in the bathrooms, and we would just leave all of our expensive camera gear literally just out in the middle of the park, and no one would touch it.
That sounds awesome.
The other culture was great. Now, we weren't in the big cities.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's theft in the big cities, but in the country, in Japan, it was so nice.
Was logistics pretty easy to navigate, or?
It was, other than we did get a roadblock on one river we tried to do. I can't remember the name of the river, but we went down and we were told by people that we weren't allowed to do it. We couldn't put in where we were, and we tried to plead ignorance. And our friend Yoshi hid behind Daniel because Daniel was the big Godzilla.
Yeah.
So he could hide behind him, but it didn't work, pleading ignorance, and they were pretty firm, and even not speaking the language we could understand, they were telling us to get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
So we had to go do a lower put-in instead.
Okay. So that was pretty close to when you were finishing up med school.
So that was right in the middle of med school.
Okay.
And so on that trip, when we weren't kayaking, I had my boards book open.
Okay.
I studied every second of every day that we were not on the river. I didn't drink after the river in general, other than the last day. We all did. However, in general, I would just be studying morning, night. I had my big board book open, and that was all I breathed other than the kayaking.
What are some of the ones that when you got back to the States, what are some of the trips that you took after the Japan?
There's too many. I
know.
can't just pull
You guys
them out
go
like that.
everywhere.
We started doing kind of 1 or 2 trips a year.
Okay.
We realized that we both loved to travel. We also realized pretty early on that the way that we did it with camping gear, and it was really just pretty inexpensive other than getting there.
Mm-hmm.
We could shop for food. We could cook our own food. We had to rent a car, yes, but you could split that between several people. We didn't need even to pay for campsites in a ton of these places. So I think we had always thought before about traveling being a very expensive endeavor. And we just, once we started doing it ourselves, just realized it really doesn't have to be expensive. We don't need to wait until we have a ton of money to do this. We can do this now
Right.
when we can actually paddle. And so we just decided to take that priority and we went.
Did you
So
go?
1 to
did
2
you go,
times a year we would go.
Have you gone on some of the Europe trips?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to Norway and the Pyrenees and all that?
Yes, those 2 I did. Now, Daniel did do some trips without me, and I did some trips without him just because of various work things, or I couldn't get off for school for all of the things. But yeah, we went. I did the Norway trip. We went to Norway together. We went to the Italian and Swiss Alps, and that was actually where Daniel proposed to me, was on
Okay.
that trip. It was just over the border, so it was
Tell
actually
that story.
in Switzerland. I had no idea that he was going to propose, but apparently he'd bought a ring before and brought it with him on the trip, so it was very planned out as far as he was concerned. We went and we were scouting a big waterfall, like a 30-foot waterfall.
Oh, he had it like.
He
Like
had
in
it
his
clipped
PFD.
into his PFD. He had bought the ring at home and had it clipped into his PFD.
What a dude.
So if we were scouting this 30-foot waterfall, and we had our line, so
Yeah.
we weren't too worried about it. It looked pretty straightforward. So he kind of pulled me aside and he told one of our friends what he was going to do. So our friend had the camera out and was ready. And then he just got down to one knee and handed me the ring. And I said yes. And then I promptly gave him back the ring because I didn't want to lose it on the
Right,
30-foot
right.
waterfall.
Yeah, yeah.
He had the carabiner.
That's hilarious.
But then after the river was over and the waterfall was fine. The funny story with that is that one of our friends who was there was so busy scouting the waterfall because she was much more nervous about it.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't even know that we had gotten engaged until we finished the river that day.
She didn't see any of it?
She was standing right next to us. She's actually in the photos and the video, and she had no idea because she was so focused on the river.
That's hilarious.
But as soon as we got off the river, Daniel gave me the ring, and then I kept it with me.
Okay. So, what are some of the high points from? I mean, I guess so for people that want to go paddle in Europe, what are some of the things like these are the runs you have to check out? What are the first ones that come to mind?
Oh, I am really not the person to ask
Yeah.
that. I would tell them to ask Daniel.
Yeah. Go talk to Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, God, and the other thing of that is there's just so many.
know.
It can't be one trip. And the other problem is water levels are kind of hard and you have to be flexible. So on all of these trips, we've had, I say we, Daniel's the planner. We've had plan A, B, C. So depending on water levels, sometimes we've had to veer away from plan A and then circle back or things like that.
Daniel's so good at networking with the paddling community in each country.
Yes, he is.
He's a master of that. Like, he's like, yeah, we're going here and we're linking up with this guy. I was like, oh, yeah, who's that guy? He's like, oh, that's the guy that runs the local kayak shop in, some blah, 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 blah place. I was like, how'd you meet him? He's like, I don't know. I just reached out to him.
Yeah, he definitely taps into all of the local things
all the beta,
before we go. And, we also just meet people wherever we go. Like, for example, a lot of our trips that we've been on, we've gone with a group of other friends and fellow Americans, and we all travel together, but not always. So on our New Zealand trip, it was just me and Daniel. That was actually our honeymoon. So ironically, for our honeymoon, we actually flew separate because I was in residency and Daniel's work had a government shutdown for Christmas. So why shouldn't he have the whole time? So he went first.
I mean, it makes sense to me.
So he did a week paddling on the North Island. I didn't mind. I told him it was fine. He said when he got to the airport, he told them that he was on his honeymoon and they asked where his wife was. He's like, oh, she's not here. No upgrades for him.
That's hilarious.
But regardless, we got to New Zealand, and once I flew in a week after him, we just met people. We went to a kayaking campsite that he'd heard about from talking to people online before our trip, and we ended up with mostly the same group of people for our entire trip that just we went around and we used them for shuttle because we only had one car between me and Daniel. And we became such good friends with the people that by the end of the trip, since we were on separate flights, I had a long layover in Sydney and Daniel didn't. one of the guys who was Australian picked me up from the airport and toured me around Sydney and dropped me back off at the airport at the end of my layover day. It was great.
For your honeymoon? That's funny. What how did you guys, so you had Astor, and then how did that change your paddling dynamics?
Oh, having kids?
Yeah, because you guys, I know you guys backed off some of the harder stuff and some of the international travel.
Honestly, not much at first.
Yeah.
So when I was pregnant with Astor, honestly, we probably paddled more than ever because I wasn't in residency anymore. I had more time. The Pigeon Dries was going. That was my favorite pregnancy run that I did when I was pregnant with Astor. And then afterwards, I started paddling maybe, a couple weeks after having the baby. We went on the Ocoee, and then we paddled a little bit that summer while we were recovering. We started taking her camping super young. We had everything laid out to just kind of include our little infant, carry her around with us. We even got some babysitters that came to the river with us, drove our shuttle, and then we would drive home, so we'd pay them for the whole time. It worked out great. We called them adventure babysitters. That's awesome. They would come in our car, drive our shuttle, and watch our infant while we kayaked. And everything was going great. And then we had a trip to Scotland planned when Astor was going to be 9 months old, and she was just starting to walk. So we were trying to figure out, what are we going to do for rain? And it's going to be rainy, boots and knee covers for our little crawling, walking 9-month-old. And then COVID happened. And our trip just got canceled. They completely canceled our flights because it was supposed to be in the end of March in 2020. And we still paddled locally after that, but it was a little harder because it was just harder to find babysitters, and we didn't want to do things like that as much. But Daniel and I definitely still paddled. And then we had our second child, and we were still paddling some, but it was a little harder. And then Daniel's heart surgery definitely put a damper on the paddling, and we're coming out of it. Yeah. We're definitely starting to paddle more, but we're still haven't hit that pre-baby amount.
Well, that was pretty terrifying. So that's good.
Yeah, that was probably my big low.
For a good reason. Yeah. What's I mean, you don't have to go into that, but like, what are some of the lows in kayaking? Like, what's some of the type 2 maybe misadventures or like biggest lessons that you've learned throughout paddling?
Honestly, we really like getting early starts. So we don't have a ton of misadventures just because we tend to be the ones that want to go early and get off the river. We've definitely gotten to rivers where they've been too high or too low, or we've had to hike off, but not a ton. A couple of years ago, I guess this was more than a couple of years ago, it was before kids, we did a semi-local river where the water just ended up being way too high. It was a long hike in, and by the time we got there, we realized it was high, but we wanted to do it anyway. Some people took off earlier. I think Daniel was one of the ones that took off a little earlier and ended up having to hike out without the boat, and then others of us continued a little further, and it still ended up taking off, and we're able to hike off, but just trying to get all the boats back in the next couple nights. And I think I got home at midnight that night, and I was supposed to be at the hospital at 4 a.m. for my surgery rotation. So it was like the first day of my surgery rotation. So that wasn't great, but I definitely made it. Yeah. And coffee helps.
What are some of the high points? Like, what are the days that you look back and you're like, that was an accomplishment?
So it started out kind of as a misadventure, but probably my first time on Dinky Creek. This was also in med school. Okay. I think it was the summer between my first and second year. My friend Darren asked if Daniel and I wanted to go to Dinky Creek, and Daniel was working. So he was like, oh, no, I can't take off more vacation days. But I was, yeah, sure. So unfortunately, Daniel could not go, and I honestly felt really bad at the time because those were the type of runs that we wanted to do together. It just wasn't possible to always do things together. So I went. Dinky Creek, you have to hike in with your loaded boat because it's usually done as a 2-day trip. So we'd hiked all the way in, which it's not a long hike, but it's definitely steep and all downhill. So we got to the put-in, and we saw how high the water was. It was higher than my friends had ever done it, and I had never done this river before. And the river at that time was definitely pushing my limits. And so the decision was, do I go for it, or do I have to hike my boat back out of the steep cliff loaded with all my camping gear that I really don't want to do? And I really wanted to do the river. So after talking to my friend and coming up with a plan, decided to go for it and do it. Definitely walked a lot on that trip, but ran a ton of awesome, really cool rapids and just had such a good time and a great experience.
Did you guys do it as a 2-day trip?
Yeah, we did it as a 2-day trip, but everyone on the trip, thankfully we had a bunch of really strong paddlers, but everyone was just really supportive of, yeah, this is big, this is scary, but we're going to do it. We're going to take our time. We're going to scout. And it went great and it was super fun. And I came off the river in just such a high. And the good news was it was still, because it was so high, now it was starting to be the weekend. So we drove all the way home, got Daniel, went back down and did it again.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we got to do it again with him at a much more normal water level. So I did it 2 times in a row.
Okay. Yeah, you and I did our first Toxaway PFD together back in, geez, what was that?
It only feels like a few years
I
ago,
know.
but it was probably like 10 years ago.
I know. We're getting old. I keep like thinking about. I was like, oh yeah, that was just a few. And then I look back at my phone and I'm like, man, that was 2016.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, my daughter is about to turn 7, so anything that I realized that has happened before kids or before I was pregnant is now like 8 years ago, which is nuts.
Yeah. Sean's gonna be a freshman in high school this year,
That's
which
crazy.
is insane.
I can't believe that.
No.
But no, that Toxaway trip was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun. That was probably one of my favorite days on the water. Was Ben showing us down, and it was like bluebird skies, perfect water level. Everybody had perfect lines. Like
It was awesome. I also love that trip just because that whole weekend was really special for me because the next day we went and did the green. Sorry, green.
I know.
At
RIP.
RIP at 200%, which I'd never done before. I'd only done the classic low water green, scraping down. So it was really special to do the Toxaway followed by the 200% green.
Have you been back to the green post-Helene?
I have not.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
I want to. I want to go in there and just take a full day and just pick it apart and like just relearn the whole thing. But then I'm afraid I'm just gonna be like in mourning the whole time. Just like. I don't know.
I have mixed feelings about it too. There's also just so many other rivers, but someday.
Yeah, same. Well, so you graduate. You guys, what made you decide to move to Tennessee? I mean, you and Daniel are both from California. So
Yeah, so Tennessee was actually part of our, I guess, travel adventure, if you will. After medical school, what you do is you rank programs that you interview. So they ask you to interview. If you say yes and you interview, you get to make a rank list. And you rank them and they rank you. And then there's something called a match where they put them all together and they say, you are moving here.
Swipe right.
Right. It's not even a swipe right. You have no choice.
Gotcha.
It's that or don't become a doctor.
Okay.
That's literally it because you can't be board certified without the first year of your internship.
Okay.
So it's swipe right or else.
Yeah.
You just lost 8 years of your life, essentially. Anyway, Daniel and I were looking into various residency programs because we figured at that point we would be going together. And we realized that there just weren't that many good programs locally where we were. And we also kind of thought, we've done a lot of California kayaking. Maybe 3 to 4 years would be a good time to go explore another part of the country. So we started looking at residencies in the Pacific Northwest. We were honestly kind of thinking like White Salmon kind of region would be a cool place to go, something like that. Yeah. And so we looked at a couple programs there, but as you know, that spot is kind of small for big hospitals, and there's just not that many. So I was trying to figure out where else in the country might be good to go where it doesn't just snow the whole time, but there's still good whitewater. And Daniel had done some
He'd been to Tennessee a few times for business, right?
For business trips. Yeah, that's right.
So I
And so
thought-
he'd gotten to see Chattanooga, and so he was thinking Chattanooga would be a cool place. So I was looking in Chattanooga, and then we realized some of our friends that we already knew lived in Knoxville, like our friend Jim Gianni. He'd done a summer internship in California, so we actually knew him well already. And he lived in Knoxville, and so we started looking at residencies in that whole area, northern Georgia, Chattanooga, Knoxville. And I matched in Tennessee.
Perfect.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how long have you guys been in Knoxville?
So we have now been in Knoxville for 11 years, I think, this July. Is that right? 12, 11, 12, something
Does
like
not
that.
feel like that. So I remember when you guys first moved, I think Martha and I went out to dinner with you guys after you'd been in town for maybe like a couple months or something.
Yeah, that
Seems
sounds
like
right.
forever ago. You remember
That's
that?
crazy. It's probably only because of kayaking that I matched the residency I did, actually, because one of the upper level residents who was interviewing me, her boyfriend was a kayaker.
Okay.
And so when they were doing the review of all of their applicants trying to decide who to match, they saw my application. It's like, well, Diane lives in California. Californians don't want to come here. She's probably going to rank us super low. And they want to find the people that want to be
Yeah.
here. And so they were going to rank me low. But the girl whose boyfriend was a kayaker is like, oh no, she's a kayaker. She kayaked on her interview day. She actually wants
probably-
to be here. And
Yeah.
so they ranked me higher because she said that.
That's funny.
And that's probably the only reason I matched, is because Emily stood up for me and said
That's
she
cool.
probably does want to be here.
Have you ever had to, like, has there been any times when you were paddling where you had to reach into your ER skill set?
Oh, yeah.
Like, a lot or like a couple times or
Thankfully, most of them are small.
like dislocations?
Definitely helped reduce several dislocations on the side of the river. I think 3. Some wounds. I've given a lot of stitches on and off the river, not necessarily on the river. We wait until we can get them good and cleaned and irrigated, but I don't necessarily make everyone go to the hospital.
What's your biggest type 2 like medical misadventure you're a part of
Well, the biggest
that you
one,
want to talk about?
the guy didn't make it, but he was not on our group. It was a rafter that we kind of came across,
Gotcha.
and we pulled him out of the river, but he didn't make it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's cool. It's nice when you go. I always love paddling with you because I know like medical, Diane's got it. Like, you know, everyone has their like skill set
Sure.
or their thing. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
thankfully haven't had to do too many other big ones, but I definitely carry things just in case.
What do you carry? Describe what's your medical kit for people who go paddling, even remote like class 4, class 5 paddling, who don't think about medical stuff like they should. What do you carry, and then what should they be carrying?
So my kit would probably be considered fairly small, but it's mostly just because I know that you don't actually need a lot of the crap.
Okay.
And that you kind of use what you have. So I definitely carry medicines, Benadryl if it's an allergic reaction. I don't have an EpiPen, which honestly I'd like, but they're kind of expensive, and me and my family don't have anaphylaxis. But if I were doing a long trip with a bunch of people I didn't know, I'd probably want that. Anti-inflammatory medicines, pain medicines, those are the big ones, and then various types of bandage. And then the other things really are my suture kit, so I can close wounds,
Is
whatever.
that your main like stop the bleed, or like is sutures, or do you carry any like?
I don't have any big bleeding thing. The
Okay.
main way to stop a bleed is direct pressure, so you just push on it. And if you need to, you could make a tourniquet out of somebody's shirt.
What do you carry it in? Like, how do you keep it all that dry?
Oh, I have 2 parts of my first aid kit. One is the first aid gear, and then the other is my survival kit. So like fire starters, matches, emergency blanket, water tablets, all of that kind of thing. And they're in 2 different Ziploc bags, and then some waterproof bags or waterproof containers, all in other bags, but just so I can get into my bag without getting things wet. And then my first aid kit in general tends to be in a different watershed bag than all of
Okay.
the rest of my stuff, just so it doesn't get wet when I'm trying to get snacks.
Yeah. Anyway, you're the perfect person to ask because a lot of people, not that they
I
don't.
mean, honestly, only carry things that you actually know how to use.
Yeah.
It's just silly to carry around big, heavy equipment. I do have one of those mouth shields for CPR now and things like that. But in general, just things that you're going to use. I have a knife. You can do a lot with the knife. You can make a splint out of somebody's shirt and a stick.
Do you recommend people get like wilderness? Do you have wilderness first aid, like wilderness? Have you done any of that stuff?
I honestly can't remember if I'm actually certified, but I've taught at some of the courses. So in residency, I was asked to be a guest speaker at I think it was a WFR, Wilderness First Responder. It might have been something more med student related. I honestly can't remember, but I gave one of the talks at it. But I can't remember if I actually officially at one point or another had any of them. But I did take several wilderness first aid classes way before medical school and things like that.
How do you, I don't even know how to ask this, but like, how do you blend in with, because, you're telling this story, like you got back in at midnight and turned around and you're back at work and no one was like, people, you're very unassuming. And when you're in your, you're in your white gown and you're running around the ER, making stuff happen, patching people up, doing stuff. Do people that you work with know, like, what you used to do on the weekends and
only
how
the
much
people
of a
I'm
badass you
close
were?
with.
Okay.
So you're right, I guess, in the unassuming thing, because I would get home at midnight often and go to work at 4 a.m. and then when I'm off, pass out and try to sleep for a couple of days to make up for it. But residency, we worked a lot. And so in order to get any time on the river, I would go paddling immediately from the hospital. Okay. I would have people's numbers kind of on speed dial so that as soon as I was leaving, like, hey, can you meet up? Or if I knew that a river was going, my boat might be already on my car.
Daniel's notorious for the selfies with you passed out in the passenger seat.
Oh, gosh. In residency, that was the only way I could paddle. I honestly don't think I could have safely done a lot of those rivers. I remember one time I worked, I think I was on a 24-hour shift, and I got off in the morning, and the Teleco was running. And so we went and did the Teleco, which he, of course, drove me to. And I remember after Baby Falls going into an eddy waiting for somebody and legitimately falling asleep waiting for the rest of our crew to come down.
In your boat? Like geared up?
Yeah. In my boat.
That's awesome.
Geared up, just kind of like my head on my life chest. And then people would finally get down and, oh, yeah, okay. But definitely was asleep.
What is some advice that you would give to people that are just getting into maybe like the outdoors in general, but kayaking specifically? Like, how would you recommend somebody progress rapidly through the Whitewater?
Ooh, I would probably say don't progress rapidly. I would say take your time. Take your time, enjoy it. There's tons of easier rivers that are also just as adventurous. You don't necessarily need it to be the Nar to have fun. And I would say explore other runs. Don't get stuck on just the same old thing day after day, even if you feel comfortable on it. I feel like kayaking and learning how to grow is by pushing your limits. And if you just do the same class 2 day after day, you're not really going to grow as much as if you do different class 2s. Mm-hmm. And then before you'll know it, you'll be ready for class 3 and you didn't even realize it. I honestly think that's what happened to me. Is I'd just done so many different rivers, and then when I met Daniel and we started kayaking together, I don't think I'd really realized how much I'd grown just doing lots of different rivers, and you start to see all of the different rapids and all of the different lines, and taking different lines on the same rivers is also something that is really helpful for growth, because that's kind of the same thing. Trying to see the rapid in a new way, not following people is another big one. Trying to read the rapid for yourself, go first, things like that. Do something different that you've never done before.
What do you want to leave people with? What'd I forget? Is there anything you want to touch on that?
Oh, I think the big thing is travel is not as expensive as people think it is.
Yes.
I think that's a big thing.
And
People,
do it while you're young.
yes, people see or hear about Daniel and I's travel, and they're just like, how? How do they do this? How is that possible? They must have all of this hidden money or things like that. But it's
You don't
just
have a trust fund that you haven't told us about?
it doesn't have to be that expensive. And there's no point in just putting it all off until you retire. I'm so glad that we didn't. We got to have all of these cool experiences before we had kids. And so now we're able to take our kids with us because we already know how to travel. A lot of people have noticed what Daniel and I do with our little kids, and they're like, how do you even pack? Like, they can't even wrap their heads around how we get
It's
our
impressive.
car loaded for a weekend trip, let alone an international trip camping with kids. But it's because we did it before. We did it before we had kids. We already have all of our stuff locked down. We know what we need. We just added our babies and then kids stuff in. And yeah, they can't carry their own gear yet, but eventually they can. Get bags big enough to fit it all. Load yourself up like a pack mule and do it.
There you go. Yeah. If you could recommend one or two people for the show, who would you recommend?
Oh, that's a great question. Laura Farrell is definitely coming to mind.
Anyone else?
I'll have to think about it and get back to you.
Okay. Do that.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate you making the drive over. I know
Yeah.
you're busy. You're a doctor. You've got kids and schedules and all this stuff.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed it. So
Yeah,
thanks for
it's
coming.
been fun watching the episodes.
Okay.